Welcome to Industry Insights. We're going to be talking today about recruiting during the pandemic, and we have a very special guest with us today, Rachael Flores. Thank you so much, Rachael, for joining us today. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Great to be here.
So we are excited to spend this time together with you. And for those of you who are just joining us, please feel free to add in any questions through the chat. We are going to have a time to answer your questions. But we'd like to start with just getting a little background about you, Rachael. So if you could tell us a little bit about your background and anything you'd like to share, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So thank you. And thank you both for inviting me to participate. I'm very excited to be here and get some normalcy back in my life. I was telling you guys earlier. So originally, a little bit about me. Originally, I'm from Nebraska. So many of you probably don't know that many from Nebraska, but we're right in the middle of the United States. Oftentimes, people don't know quite where we are, but that's where I was born and raised, and I went to school at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. About 5 years or so ago, I moved to the East Coast, and so currently living in the New York City, Jersey City area, and really excited to kind of experience life here. It's been a lot of fun. As part of my schooling, I actually went to school for management and HR, so I'm one of the few ones that actually gets to practice what I studied, so that's really exciting to be in the HR space. I've been in the recruitment space for about 15 years or so. So I've done a variety of different jobs within that area. I've worked for a variety of different industries, including consumer packaged goods, like a food manufacturing company, financial services, an HR company, and then most recently being employed at a fashion apparel kind of retail company as well. So brand new to that industry and learning all that I can. I've held different types of positions, from employer branding to, of course, university relations, and I've done university relations and recruiting for about 9 or 10 years now. So very passionate about working with students. I think you guys are a lot of fun to work with in general when it comes to recruiting. I think you're very appreciative of everything and working with employers, and that makes me feel good about the job that I get to do every day. So thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it.
So given your wealth of experience in university recruiting, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the trends that you're seeing related to the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think number one trend is, depending on what industry you're in, you're either seeing a ramp up in hiring or most likely kind of a slowdown. And so it's either hiring is on hold at the moment. There's a lot of people obviously that are out of work, so the unemployment rate is very high. It's an unprecedented high with the number of people filing for unemployment. Unfortunately, companies have had to make the very difficult decision to either furlough their employees depending on what industry they're in. That can include layoffs, furloughs, reducing hours, reducing pay. So that's something we haven't really seen in the most recent times. So that's definitely the number one trend. Assuming that companies are hiring still and they're moving forward with their hiring process, the rise of the video is definitely the second one that we're seeing for sure. And some companies had used video before, I would say. A lot of, especially larger companies, probably already had that as a part of their process, either by way of saving money as a cost-saving exercise, or just a convenience exercise, especially if they are an employer that has many locations, that's hiring nationally, globally, things like that. So video has been pretty prominent already, but I would say it's definitely something to get used to. And from what I've seen, I know students don't necessarily like to use video. They definitely prefer the face-to-face, as do I, quite honestly. I mean, who doesn't? But I think people are adapting, and obviously with, you know, a webinar like this, we're all on video today too. So definitely that's not going away anytime soon, I doubt. I think one thing with video though that we're starting to see, that I've heard, I've been on a couple webinars recently as well, is that it's leveling the playing field for smaller universities, which is great. It's a chance for smaller universities to get in front of larger companies that maybe, you know, they're not in their key school network, let's say, so they can't necessarily visit campus and it's not a part of their traditional recruiting methods. So this gives them a chance to still connect and kind of broaden their reach. Something else that we're seeing is a call to the inequities that it might bring as well. So depending on where you're at in, the United States, students might not have access to, great technology, bandwidth issues, they might not have high-speed internet or Wi-Fi. So that is something that as employers, we're having to watch out for as well, so we don't create those inequities in the recruiting process. And then I would just say anything virtual is fair game at this point. So webinars like these I mentioned before, virtual conferences are popping up, virtual recruiting, virtual open houses, virtual career meetups. Like virtual is the word of 2020, I would say.
Definitely, definitely. So I appreciate so much you sharing kind of some of those perspectives. And you mentioned about the virtual world. And I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what skills you think are most in demand at this point, and if you have any recommendations for how students could continue to develop those skills.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think soft skills are always going to be critical and something that students and any professional actually need to continue to develop, because that's what really sets you apart. Those are the pieces that make you uniquely you, I would say. And, anyone can kind of master the skill of doing the job, whether that's, a technical piece, a more creative piece, you can master that. But how you go about doing your job, that's really the soft skill piece. So I would say fine-tuning things like your attitude. So how you show up to work, how you approach people, how you approach life and problems. I've often heard managers say, like, I can teach, Jane how to do the job, but I can't teach Jane to have a great attitude when she comes to work. So definitely kind of check your attitude and make sure you get that on track. Focus on your communication. Communication is so key. And you would think that communication is easy, right? It's natural. We do it every day, but there's, how you talk to your friends. There's how you talk to your professional colleagues. There's how you talk to your teachers and university partners and things like that. So there's verbal communication, there's written communication, and there's a time and place for everything. So think about how you're approaching your communication methodologies. Collaboration and teamwork, that's not going anywhere. As much as you like to maybe work solo or work individually, likely you will have to collaborate and work on a team. So I definitely suggest adding that. And then just creative problem solving and being innovative, not being afraid to kind of be a little bit vulnerable and showcase your ideas and your thoughts and what you would bring to the table. And I would say in order to get some of these things, you have to have practice. So it's not something you can necessarily just do on your own and hope that they will come. And it's probably not something you can actually learn solely in an academic setting as well. So seek out a professional mentor. I mean, they can certainly help guide you. And I always tell students, have more than one mentor, and definitely have mentors that are not within your field of study too. So they don't have to necessarily be someone that you would aspire to be as part of your professional career, but somebody maybe that is outside of your industry that you can gain that different perspective from. And then I would also say something you can do is just get involved. Anything that you can do that will gain you access to people and teams is great. And obviously that's a little bit hard right now in the middle of a pandemic, but when things kind of get back to the new normal, getting involved in sports, volunteering, Greek life, anything again that will give you a chance to be a well-rounded student. That's really what employers are looking for. So we're not just looking for, the brainiac with a 4.0 GPA who didn't do anything in their academic career other than go to class. We're really looking for individuals that are more well-rounded, and that's what we mean by that.
That was so much wonderful information about the development of skills and highlighting some specific types of skills. I really appreciate that. I think I heard you talk a little bit about gaining some more experience and some suggestions for that. wondering if you have any other tips for students who weren't able to do an internship, perhaps due to this pandemic. Any
Yeah.
other things that you would recommend that they do to stay competitive during this time?
Yeah, certainly, certainly. And it is a very difficult time. So if you were one of the lucky ones to get an internship, to secure your internship for this summer, and one of the unfortunate ones that maybe had their internship canceled, I would absolutely, number one, list that on your resume. So I think there is, some debate out there. Do you list or do you not list? I'm of the opinion that you definitely should. And from what I'm hearing from my other colleagues, they're also in agreement. So this is something that we've never seen before. But it is something that as employers and recruiters, we will see as on the resume. So you earned it, you worked for it. A lot of the employers that you're going after are pretty selective and they have a rigorous interviewing process. So absolutely list that on your resume, number one. And then a few other things, if you, again, were one of the unfortunate ones that maybe didn't get an internship for this summer or had yours canceled, I would say number one is, now is the time to work on your passion project. So you always hear, people say, oh, I never have time for that, or I never have time for this, or I can't, I'm working, so I can't really do what I want to do, so to speak. So now you can actually do that. It's really easy for creative types if, you can work on your portfolio, if you can design a website, if you can design an app, I would say collaborate with your friends and classmates. You don't have to do this alone. So make sure to make use of other people that that might be in the same situation that you're in. There's a lot of free resources right now. Just literally Google, free resources for college students, and a ton of information will come up. I've heard of, Ivy League institutions, opening up their classes for free. So make sure to definitely take advantage of those. Number two, now is the perfect time to kind of set yourself apart and get involved in your local community. So from a small and mid-sized business perspective, all the SMBs are kind of in the same boat with everybody else. They're struggling. They've had to maybe furlough or reduce staff. And if you have the time and the bandwidth now to actually help them out, I mean, how good would that make you feel doing something great for your community and then getting to actually practice, or even not, if you don't practice what you're doing, what you're studying, just giving you a chance to grow in general and kind of give back. Think about what types of skills you can bring, to the table. Is it, do they need a website? Can you help them design a website? Do they need some project management and organization skills? If you're maybe a finance and accounting student, can you help them out with their books or something like that you can just give back? And then lastly, I would say stay connected. Don't go radio silent. Continue to use your university partners, your university resources, reach out to your career services team, your advisors, stay connected with your professional mentors, with maybe employers that you were once connected with as well. Continue to tap into those and just be front and center so people don't forget about you, and then you kind of have to start all over from the beginning. So those are the few things that I would recommend to do.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you so much. And for those of you tuning in, if you check out the resources in Handshake, many of those suggestions, you can put those into practice, and there's some tips and tools in the Career Resource Library to help you with that. So another question kind of along these lines that I'm thinking is advice that you would give to those who are looking for a full-time position right now. Any tips or strategies you're thinking that might be helpful?
Yeah, so full-time hiring, is going to be hit and miss as well for a while, just for all the reasons that we kind of talked about. Some employers are hiring, some are not. I would say, settle in. You don't have to actually get a job right now. I mean, I understand if you have financial need, that's a totally different situation. But if you don't get a job right at this moment, you can always get a job in August. You can always get a job in September. Don't be afraid to pause and just kind of take a little bit of inventory. Give yourself time to kind of decompress, take in everything that happened, and then kind of tackle that next. So that's a lot of the advice that I've seen. I definitely would recommend that. And again, continue to work your connections, continue searching. Indeed obviously is a great job aggregator that a lot of employers use in general. That's one that I definitely recommend. Continue to look on Indeed, set up job alerts. LinkedIn obviously is a great professional network. If you don't already have a LinkedIn profile, definitely create one. Reach out to, if you need help, reach out to, again, your university career services team, your advisor, your professional mentors to kind of help you with that. That is a resource that recruiters use day in and day out. Obviously, it kind of depends maybe what job you're doing or what industry you're in, but 9 times out of 10, I would say if you're on the professional track, LinkedIn is the space that you want to be in. So definitely get that going. I would say don't be afraid to take something that maybe will get you by until you find your next role. So if you are kind of financially strapped and do need that money to come in, definitely, take something that will make you feel good, but maybe won't necessarily be along the lines of what you want to do necessarily to make your money. But that can help kind of make ends meet until you kind of find your dream job, so to speak. I think a lot of students get on this path where I have to do this first and then this next and then that next. It's not always linear from that perspective. So it's okay to kind of go here, then there, then here, and then back down and up. So you don't have to necessarily be on that linear career trajectory.
Excellent. I love all of those tips. And I think we do have some questions as well. So I did want to make sure we have some time for that. So Christine, are there some questions that you wanted to share that we've gotten from our viewers?
Yes, there are. So one question is, as an engineer who tries to focus on technical skills and experience on the resume, what do you think is the best way to express soft skills in the application and interview process, especially since everything's online?
Yeah, so soft skills don't really come across on a resume at all. So I've always said a resume gets you the interview gets you the job. So you want to make sure your resume is as sharp as it can be. That's definitely where your hard skills, where your technical skills come in, your experience that you've had, the transferable skills that you've gotten from maybe volunteering or kind of, again, being that well-rounded student. Make sure all of that is on your resume to get you the interview. And then when you land the interview, that's where you can definitely highlight some of your soft skills. So it's, soft skills will come across whether you're on the phone, the video, or in person. So I would, that would be my recommendation, is to land the interview first and then get your soft skills kind of together and make sure that those come through in the interview process.
And as a follow-up to that one, do you have any tips for virtual interviewing?
Yeah, so funny thing is we're all in this virtual environment, and even us right now, we were talking about, can you hear the mower in the background? Can you hear, I just had a fire truck go by and I'm like, oh man, I wonder if they can hear the sirens. So I would say don't focus on things that you can't control. Obviously, I can't control, when the fire truck is going to go by or when the garbage man might be, deciding to take out the garbage and stuff. So focus on things that you can control. And so that means, getting into an environment where you can be as quiet as possible. So if you live with roommates or you're at home with family, getting into as quiet of a space as you can, kind of secluding yourself in a room. Don't be in the middle of your living room with your roommate that's gonna, travel behind you, sort of thing. Those are definitely things you can control, and don't worry about everything else. I would say employers are probably a little bit more flexible now than they have ever been, because they are experiencing this every single day in their work environment, not just from an interviewing perspective, but just daily work. They're used to individuals maybe having their kids come up in their laps and, take over their meetings and things like that. So, but from an interview perspective, you want to try to limit that as much as you can. And I would say don't worry about the technical piece. And if if your audio is messing up or your video is messing up, something like that, settle down. Again, focus on what you can control. That's kind of out of your control. You might have to switch to solely an audio rather than a video. Sometimes the bandwidth can be a problem there. where your lips don't match what you're saying and things like that. So don't worry about that too much. Be comfortable, relax. You know, we're all human here. Smile, you know, let it naturally flow. Don't try to have like a script and be ready to read everything, because that's not how you would present yourself in an interview either. So try to be as natural as you can. That would be my advice.
Thank you very much. And we have another great question from one of our students. This pandemic will affect the current recruitment cycle and job availability, but how will this affect job applications in the future for current freshmen 2 or 3 years from now? Will it be easier or more difficult to secure an internship or job?
If I had that answer, I think I'd be a rich woman, because nobody can really predict the future. Unfortunately, you just don't know, you know, we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. We don't know if there's going to be a wave 2 or 3 or what the future might hold. So unfortunately, I just don't have a great answer from there. I would say, you know, continue to do all the tips that we're doing, you know, that we're talking about today. Continue to stay connected. Continue to do what you can to further your education, further your skill development, and, you know, just continue to stay connected to what types of jobs are out there. Because again, you just don't know. And who's hiring today, they might not be hiring tomorrow. And who's not hiring today, they might be hiring tomorrow. So try not to get so down and kind of on the outs there, and stay as positive as you can. And I'm sure things are going to work out.
Wonderful, thank you. An additional question. As a liberal arts major whose internship was canceled, how would you recommend building technical skills over the summer?
Great question. So liberal arts are wide ranging, right? So depending on what you're studying, I mean, I would say just continue to focus on those areas. If you're not sure how to go about doing that, again, I would highly suggest working with your advisor, your career services team, see what types of ideas they might have as well. Trust them. They know what they're talking about. You know, they've been working with students of your same background, and they have probably different connections, or can find, you know, those connections to help you out. So definitely lean on them, and don't try to do it on your own, I would say. And then again, if you do have those transferable skills and you can help out your, you know, maybe communities, try to volunteer, you know, try to hone in on what you can bring to the table, and those types of skills as well, that will be valuable to other people that maybe can't afford to necessarily go out and pay for the talent. You know, it's unfortunate that we're in the situation that we're in, but trying to, again, make the best of it and control what you can control.
Absolutely, and it seems like now's the time to be flexible in what you're looking for, and also creative and making these for you.
Definitely.
We had an email question that was sent in, and it says, for semi-recent graduates, so May of 2019, who have been let go due to the pandemic, what advice do you give them on recruiting right now? Should they be looking for entry-level positions, or should they be looking for levels above that?
Well, I would say it kind of depends where you're at. So everyone has a unique experience by their employer. Some employers, you're gaining incredible skills and you're ready for that next level. So, you know, don't sell yourself short. If you feel like you can make it to the next level and you have the skills that are needed, or even if you don't have, like, check all the boxes of that job description, if you feel like you've got it, you know, 5 out of 10 of them or something, go for it and see what you know, see what happens. I would say there's no harm in applying for something just to see how it happens, because you don't know what the employer is actually going to be looking for. Unfortunately, you don't know what skills are absolutely a must, and maybe what skills are preferred, and maybe if you have this skill over that skill, it's weighted a little bit higher. So don't sell yourself short. I always tell students that, you know, be confident. And for those students that maybe didn't get the experience that they were hoping for that first year, you might have to go for the entry level. So don't rule those out either. Again, be flexible. You know, look for opportunities where maybe there's growth. So if you are going for an entry level opportunity, you know, ask in the interview process, what is the career path? You know, what is the next step in this? That shows that you're interested. It shows that you're thinking about the future and you're not focused just on the now, sort of thing. And, you know, I think that could help out as well.
So kind of as a follow-up to that question, I'm wondering if you could just touch on, you mentioned transferable skills, but during this time, there may be some students who are thinking about maybe switching between industries or pursuing different types of roles than they previously did. I was wondering if you could touch on that at all, about maybe any tips for students who are thinking of maybe
Yeah.
a small pivot or something of
Yeah.
that sort.
I mean, definitely don't rule out other industries. Especially if you look at someone like me who's been in a totally different industry every time I've changed jobs. From an HR background, from a recruiting background, all the skills that I have are definitely transferable. So I've been able to take, you know, my problem solving skills, my leadership skills, my organization skills, you know, with me from job to job. And yes, there is a little bit of a learning curve. There's definitely a little bit of a learning curve as you switch industries. And that's something I'm going through right now, you know, being in a new industry. And so I always say, I'm like, forgive me if I don't know all your acronyms or if I don't know all the industry terminology right now. I will get there. But I know kind of the backbone of how to do my job, sort of thing. So, you know, step outside of your comfort zone. I always say, you know, without discomfort comes no growth. So in order to grow as a person, to grow in your career, you will have to do things that are a little bit uncomfortable, and that might be switching industries and kind of learning something new. So yeah, don't be afraid to do that at all.
Great. Those are some great tips. And I appreciate that you mentioned that, you know, it is a process. It is a learning process. But also, I think when you pivot, you bring your skills, your strengths, and also a fresh perspective. So thank you so much for sharing those examples.
Wonderful. I just have one last question from a student, and it says, I've heard that it's important to network and make connections. What does that really mean?
Yeah, networking, I would say, is a buzz term that's definitely thrown out there. It's, from my perspective, I would say, you know, when I started my new position, I had a lot of different connections to make. There was a lot of different universities that I hadn't tapped into before. So getting to know individuals, what they're interested in, maybe what their passions are, how they got to where they are, how, if you're going to be working with them, you know, what are they focused on, sort of thing. That's really what it means to network. It's not just about the number of people that you know. It's not necessarily the quantity. I would say quality networking is definitely better over quantity, because the last thing that you'd want to do is say, oh, hey, well, I know, you know, Joe, but I really don't know Joe. He's only in my network. I've never talked to him, but I'm going to go ask him for a job. You know, that really doesn't work. So, you know, it's not necessarily about what that person can do for you, but what you can also do for that person. It is a give and take. And oftentimes if you're leveraging them, you want to give them something that they could potentially get out of it as well, and not necessarily asking for that favor right off the bat, I would say.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. We are so grateful for your knowledge and your expertise, and just thank you for joining us today and expanding the knowledge of the students who have joined us and all of those who will watch this on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Anything you'd like to say, Allie?
I just appreciate so much your perspective and all the tips that you shared. It's really been wonderful to have you taking this time with us today. And for all of you who are viewing, please take advantage of all the resources that are available to you, and we're here to support you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. And if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, you certainly can. Christine and Allie both have my contact information, so you can certainly share that with any students as well. I'm happy to kind of be in their network and continue the conversations.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thanks to everyone who joined us today. Take care.